Before proceeding towards the families, before proceedings the families, first we will learn about the terminologies that is used in the family description. So, starting from that is the morphology of angiosperm, that will in this particular topic we will study the different parts of angiosperms and what are the different glossaries or terminologies that used to describe the our angiospermic plants. So, first of all, as we are going to discuss the morphology of angiosperm, the first that what is the angiosperm? Angiosperms are the flowering plant. They have a seeds that are enclosed in a fruit and most are pollinated by birds and bees. They have a finite growing seasons like grasses, tulips, oaks, and these angiospermic plants are divided into further in two categories, monocots and dicots. So, as angiospermic are the flowering plants. In all the plants, this is the only category which has a visible flowers. Gymnosperms, there is only two category of plant that produces the seeds. One is the gymnosperm and the next is the angiosperm. Gymnosperms, they have a naked seeds because their seeds are not enclosed by fruits. Only the angiospermic plants that have a enclosed seed in a fruits. So, that making a angiosperm is the most advanced in the all types of plant in the algae, bryotado and gymno. So, angiosperm is the most advanced category of plants and today we will learn the different terminologies that used in the describing the plants of angiosperm. So, first of all, angiosperm is divided into two main groups, that is the monocots and dicots, and the first that is the dicot. So, what is a dicot? Dicot plants generally they have a two seed leaves, that is termed as the cotyledons. They have a network of veins in the leaves, as you can say, that is termed as the reticulate type of venation. Then they have a mainly taproot system. This is you can see here they have a taproot system and the flower parts are either tetramerous or pentamerous. As you can see, this particular flower has a 5 petals. So, these have a they have a petals, calyx and rhizome. They are present in the multiples of 4 or 5. The flower is either tetramerous or pentamerous. Then if we see the anatomy, the stems in these particular plants are vascular bundles in this particular plants are arranged in a ring, as you can see in this particular figure. These are the vascular bundles that are arranged in a ring. And the examples of dicot plants are like rose, tomato, peas. There is a number of dicot plants that belong to this. So, this is the typical identification of a dicot plant. Those plants that have a two cotyledonary leaves, they have a network of veins that is called as reticulate venation. Generally, they have a primary taproot system and the flowers are either tetramerous or pentamerous. Anatomically, you can identify dicots by the arrangement of their vascular bundle in a ring. So, we can easily identify a dicot either morphological anatomically by its leaves and anatomically by the stems of arrangement. Now, next moving towards the monocot, and monocot has only one seed leaves, as we can see they have only one cotyledons. They have a parallel leaf venation. In the leaves you will find there is a veins are parallelly arranged. Then they have a fibrous root system, as you can see in this particular image they have a fibrous type of root system. And the next the most important thing, that is the flower parts arranged in a trimerous structure. That means all the flower parts either petals and rhizome they are either present in the multiples of 3 in general. And then the vascular tissue, that is stem in their is scattered form. The vascular bundles in the stem they are scattered, there is no particular in the ring arrangement. So, they are scattered in a ground tissue in the stem. The examples of these like the palms. So, these are the generally two groups of angiosperm, that is the monocot and dicot. Now, moving towards the what are the lives according to the life cycle, the angiospermic plants are divided into mainly 3 categories. If we classify the angiospermic plant, that is on the basis of their life cycle, they have a 3 categories: annuals, biennials and perennials. So, annuals are those plants that germinate, grows and die only in a one growing season, like marigold. Marigold we as you know, marigold is growing only one season, then it at the end of the winter season it dies. Biennials are plants that germinate, grows and dies in two growing seasons like cabbage, beetroots and carrots. So these are the plants that requires two seasons to complete their whole life cycle, from seeds germination to the flowering, and then lastly the seed formation, then they will become die. Then the third category of plants that depending upon their life cycle is the perennials. Perennials are those plants that requires more than 3 growing seasons, more than 2 growing seasons, or that is 3 or more for completing their life cycles, like all the trees and shrubs that requires generally more than 2, and many herbaceous plant also perennials like grasses. So these are the some examples, like hibiscus is also a perennial plants. So these perennial plants requires more than 2 growing seasons for completing their life cycle from germination to grow to the dies. So these are the 3 category of plant depending upon their life cycle, that is the annuals, biennials and perennials, that is the depending upon the completion of their life cycle, that is annuals, biennials and perennials. Now moving towards the habit of plants, because we have to also describe, when we describe particular family, that we will start from the habit and what is the life cycle pattern of this particular plant. So if we see the habit of plant, generally the plant are generally categorized into the 4 or 5 categories, like the herbs. This is the category of the plant that have a small plant with non-woody stems like grasses. So herbaceous plant are those plants that have a weak stem, as you can see here the stems is non-woody, that is herbaceous in nature, and these are the very small size plant, like example grasses. Then the next category of plant according to habit, they are the shrubs. Shrubs are the medium bushy plants and they have a woody stem, as you can see, like hibiscus. These plants have a woody stems and these are the medium bushy plants. And the third category of plant depending upon the habit, like trees. Trees are tall perennial plants with single woody stem or trunk, as you can see, and the large number of plants are belong to this category, that is trees like ficus, then neem tree. These are the examples of trees. Trees have a very tall and perennial habits. Then the fourth category is the creepers. Creepers also have a weak stem plants and they creep along the side of on the ground. As the examples of the creepers, the best example of the creepers is the cucurbitaceae plants. And the last category, that is the climbers. Climbers, they also have a weak stem plants that climb by with the help of other objects. They have some supporting, like they have either tendrils to grow or climb on this particular objects. So these are the main categories of plant, that is the herbs, shrubs, trees, creepers or either climbers. Depending upon the plants is have a different habits. Now moving towards the next, that is type of trees. As we have seen, there is a tree which have a perennial habit and there are different forms of tree depending upon their growth habit. Like this is the first one, which is called as caudex. Caudex is a type of tree in which the main stem or trunk is unbranched, and here at the top of the stem there is a crown of leaf is present, and this type of is called as the caudex form of tree. And this is the most prominent example of this is a palm. Then the next type is excurrent, in which in the excurrent the lower branches of the stem has a longer growth, while the upper branches of the stems, that are the lateral branches, have a lower growth in comparison to the lower branches. So they will give a pyramidal shape, and this type of shape, the example of this particular type of shape is plant is the polyanthium, it is also called as ashok. So this is a excurrent type of tree growth. And the third type is dehiscent, which is the common example is ficus. These plants form a quite dense and a dome like structure at the top, and most of this type of plant are used as a shade plants like ficus. So these are the some forms of trees like caudex, in which the leaves are arranged on the top and there is a stem is unbranched. In index current, the lower branches have a more growth than the upper branches have a some limited growth, that giving a pyramidal shape. And in the delicescent, the plant have a dome shape structure, that giving a making us suitable for the shade plants. These are some categories of trees. So now moving towards these are the habits of the, now moving towards the major organs of a plant. As we have already discussed that on the basis of life cycle, plants are annuals, biennials and perennials, and on the basis of their habit they are either herbs, shrubs, trees or creepers or climbers. And if we see a single plant, they have a major organs that divided into two main parts, either root system or shoot system. So these are the major organs. The root, which is a part of a root system, that anchors the plant in particular space and absorb water and other minerals from the soil. So root is providing the anchor and absorbing the nutrient and water from the soil. Then next, all the floral parts like leaf, stem, fruit, flower, all belong to the next type of system, that is the shoot system. So in the plant there is a major two types of system is present, either the root system, that is the below ground part, and the shoot system, that is the above ground part of the plants. Then the shoot system is further categorized into two categories. First is the vegetative parts like stem and leaves. Like stem, that carries the water and food from one place to the other, that work as a transport. They also support the plant because stem is the link between the leaf and a root. Then the leaves, they makes the food. As you know, plants are the autotrophic in nature. They make their own food by the process of photosynthesis. Then the plants in the shoot system, the two parts, flower and fruit, are the reproductive organs. Like flower, they have a male and female reproductive part, androecium and gynoecium, and by the fertilization of pollen grains and egg, there is a formation of a embryo. After that, there is a formation of seed that enclosed in a fruit. As I have told you, in the angiosperm, the seeds are enclosed under the fruit, and after the dispersal of these fruit, the new seed is dispersed in the ground or maybe transferred from one place to another, and the new plant is germinated. So the plant organs, generally all the plant organ has a two categories, root system and shoot system. Root system only has a one organ, and the shoot system has a two further part, vegetative organs and reproductive organ. In vegetative organ there is a stem and leaf. In the reproductive organ there is a flower and fruit, which are the main part of the major organs of the plant. Now moving towards the first, that is the root system. As I have told you, root system which anchors the plant and absorb the water and minerals, and it is usually underground. Generally roots are underground, but later we will discuss that some roots are also aerial, but generally roots are underground in nature. And if we talk about the root system, generally there is a two type of root system present in the plants, either tap root system or fibrous root system. These are the two main type of root system. Tap root generally present in dicot plants, and the fibrous roots are present in monocots. So these are the primary roots. As you can see, these are the parts of the root. This one is the primary root, which is arises from the radicle, and the branches of this particular root is called as secondary root, and the further branches of this particular secondary root is called as tertiary root. And at the end you will find there is a lots of root hairs present, and all the absorption of the water is done by these particular root hairs. That is approximately 95% of the absorption is done by these root hairs, as you can see here. These are the parts of the root. There is the primary root and the secondary root, and this is the root of a carrot. This also has a tap root system. This is the primary root and these are the secondary root, and this is the fibrous root that don't have a differentiation in the primary and secondary. They have a just dense network of the roots as in the grasses. So first, that is the tap root system. In the tap root system we feature a single thick primary root, as we have seen earlier in the figure, that is called as the taproot with a smaller secondary root growing out from the sides. Generally, the taproot have a very deep penetration, that is up to the 60 meter in almost, that is around 200 feet and below the ground surface. So, you can see here the taproot has a quite deep penetration, and the taproot, that is why, because of they penetrate deep, and that why they have a advantages for the plant that growing in a dry soil. So, if the plant is growing in a dry soil where the water level is quite below the soil, so taproot is quite advantageous in this particular type of plant, and generally all the dicot plants have a taproot system, and the taproot are those which arises from the radicle, that originated from the radicle. So, this is the taproot types. Now, moving towards the fibrous root system. Fibrous root system have a small branching root called as fibrous roots, but there is no large primary root present. As I have told you, there is no differentiation between the primary and secondary. There is a just dense network of a root that is present from the lower side of the stem. There is a huge number of thread-like roots that increases the surface area for the absorption of minerals. That is why, but the fibrous would also anchor the plant less securely, because they do not have a deep penetration. That is why there is a have a less security. But the fibrous root system has a typically a part of the monocot such as the grasses. But if you see, the fibrous root system can help to prevent the soil erosion because they have a quite dense network. So, they bind the soil very tightly at that portion where it is present. So, these are the main two types of a root system which present in a plant. And if you see the plant, the root system that has a mainly three type of zonation. As you can see, these are the zone of maturation, these are the zones of elongation, these are the zones of meristematic zone, and this is the root cap. So, you can see the lowest portion, that is has the meristematic zone, is this is the zone where all the root is quite dividing and only have the meristematic. So, there will be no differentiation in this particular type of zone, only the cells have a meristematic cells that dividing into the, and there is a growth of the root is taking place from this particular zone. Then next to the meristematic zone, there is a zone of elongation. In this particular zone, there will be no division, only the cells become enlarged. And in the maturation zone, here all the differentiation you can see, there is a formation of the lateral roots, then the primary root, then there is a presence of a root hairs, and all the absorption and all the work is done by the zone of maturation, because there are root hair present in the zone of maturations. And as we have seen earlier, that the 95% of water is absorbed from the zone of root hair zone, and it is present in the zone of maturations. So, these are the parts of the root and their function. Now, moving towards the modifications of root. The first, that is the taproot modification, and the next one is the adventitious root modification. The taproot is modified for mainly two functions, either for the storage as in the conical form, fusiform or nephriform, and the next is the breathing root. Further, adventitious root also have a three categories, either for the storage, for the mechanical support, and for the vital function. So, now moving towards the first taproot modification in the storage category. As you can see in this particular image, these are all these 4 are the modifications of taproot, that is for the storing the food material. Depending upon the shape, all these roots are storing the food material, but depending upon their shape, they have a different names. Like the first one, that is the conical root, which has a conical shape, and the examples of this particular root is carrot. Then the next one is the fusiform, and the example of this particular type of root is radish. Then the next one is the nepiform roots, and the example of this type of root is turnip or beetroot. And the next one is the tuberous root, which particularly do not have any specific shapes. And the fifth type of the root taproot modification is the nodule formation. Nodules are the symbiotic association of the taproot plants, like especially in the Fabaceae family. Their roots are associated with the symbiotic bacteria like rhizobium, and they fixes the atmospheric nitrogen into the ammonia. So, these are the taproot modifications. These 4 are for the storing the food material, and the fifth one is the used for the nitrogen fixation. So now moving towards the next taproot modification, these are the breathing roots, are also called as the pneumatophores. Like as we know that a mangrove plant are grow in a deep swamp places. So in this particular area there is a, in the soil there is a deficiency of the oxygen. So in these particular mangroves plant, the root become negatively geotropic, because by nature the roots are positively geotropic, they grow deep in the soil. But these roots or breathing roots, they are arising negatively geotropic. As you can see, they are growing just above the soil, they are the negatively geotropic roots that present in the mangroves plants. And you can see, if you carefully observe the roots, they have a many minute pores. These pores are called as pneumatophore, and these are also called as the breathing pores, because due to the deficiency of oxygen in the soil, these roots take gases exchange from the atmosphere, and that is why they are comes in the negatively geotropic growth, and they perform the work of gaseous exchange, and these type of root is present in the mangroves plants. Now next is the adventitious root modifications. First, that is the for the storage, and depending upon the shapes, as we have seen earlier, these also have a further different types of name. Like the first one is the tuberous root, that is in case of sweet potato, which has a tuberous roots. As you can see, they do not have a specific shape, they are just swollen and they are storing the food material. Then there is the fasciculated root. As you can see in this particular dahlia, there is a bunch of roots is present from the just below the aerial shoot. As you can see here, these are termed as the fasciculated root that present in the dahlia. Then the beaded root in the mimodica, these roots have a, as you can see, they have a beaded structure in the roots. Then the fourth one is the nodulose root, as in case of turmeric. At the end of the root you will find there is a swelling, that is the swollen root at the end. These roots are reserving the food materials. And the fifth one is the annulated root. They have a whole, the root system has the annulated root that is storing the food materials. So all these are the examples of the storage food material roots in the case of adventitious roots. Now next is the modifications of adventitious root. These roots are also adventitious root modifications, but they are performing the function of a mechanical support. Like prop root in the case of ficus plants. These prop root, as you can see, these are the aerial roots that arises from the stem, from the branches, and they are supporting the plant. As you can see, the plants have a quite large branches, and these roots originated from these branches and go to the in the soil. As you can see, they are supporting the, providing the mechanical support to these large branches in case of ficus. Then the next is the stilt root that present in the pandanus or in zea mays. These stilt root also provide the support to the growing trunk. As you can see in maize plants, they have a erect stem, and these stilt root arises from the nodal region of the lower portion of the stem, and they are providing the support for the their standing position. So they are stilt root providing the support to the this erect stem. Then many plants have a climbing root, as in case of money plant or beetle. These root help in the climbing of the these particular money plants or climbing plants. Then the fourth type, that is for the support, that is the climbing root, as in case of epiphytic plant, like in case of orchids. These climbing root or epiphytic roots are support the plant into the that host plant, that is that on the trunk. So these are the some root that is providing the mechanical support to the plant. Then these adventitious root also provide some vital functions, like in vanda these climbing root also, as you can see, they are providing support, and these hanging root provide the, they absorb the moisture from the atmosphere, because the roots are attached to the substratum or host. So they absorb their water requirement from the atmosphere due to the presence of this Then these bryophyllum in these roots are used for the reproduction. Then in cuscuta they have a haustorial root, they absorb the food material because cuscuta is a stem parasite, and these the root are penetrated into the host system, and from there they absorb the food material. And in case of Tenospora, the root, here you can see these are the roots that become food synthetic and perform the work of, and they are synthesizing the food materials. So as you can see, the roots that just not supporting the plant from the soil and not absorbing the water and minerals, they also performing many other functions, like they are also storing the food material, they are providing the mechanical support, as well as some of the root are performing some vital function that is necessary for the survival of the plant. So this is all about the root. Now next is for the shoot system. In the shoot system, as I have told you earlier, the shoot system has a two main parts, that is the vegetative organs and reproductive parts. In vegetative parts there is a leaves and stem. In reproductive part there is a fruit and flower are the parts of the reproductive system of the plants. So we have already studied the root system. Now first of all start the shoot system with stem. Stem is generally a above ground portion of the shoot that bearing the leaves, as you can see here. This is the stem, and in the root and stem there is a differentiation that roots do not have a nodes and internodal regions, but stem has a nodes and internode. As you can see, these are the nodal regions, and in between the nodes there is the presence of internodes. And from this nodal region you can see the branches and the leaves arises from this particular nodal regions. So this is the above ground part of the plant, and it is termed as the stem, which perform the functions of like giving the support to the plant body. It conduct the water and minerals from the root to leaves. It also transport food, act as a food transporter because food synthesized in the leaf, then it is transferred from the through stem to the roots. Then they can also store food. We will discuss later that many stem is also storing the food materials. Then many stem are also used in the proliferation and propagation of the plants. Then they are produced support for the climbing, like many stem has a modification that is help in the climbing support, and they also offer protection when it is transformed or converted into the spine like structure. This is the function of the stem. Now moving towards the some modification that present in the stem. Earlier we have seen that in the roots there is a modification, that is the taproot modifications and the adventitious root modification. And stem, the modification is divided into three categories: underground modification, that is part of the soil system, then subaerial modifications and aerial modification. In underground there is a four type of modification that is termed as rhizome, like example is ginger in tubers in potato, corm in case of Amorphophallus, and bulbs in case of onion. Then there is a subaerial modification like runner, offset, suckers, stolon, and in aerial modification there is a tendril, thorns, phylloclade and cladodes. So first of all discussed all the things one by one. So here you can see these are the list of the underground modification, that is the rhizome, corm, bulb and tuber. These all are the stem modification, that is below the soil or underground modifications. As you can see here, the first one, that is the rhizome. You can see these are the nodal regions as present in this particular plants, and these rhizome are the below the ground part, below underground stem that grows horizontally, and just opposite to this the corm, which is also a underground stem which also store the food material but is grown vertically. As you can see, these are the scale leaves. That bulb is also a underground stem, that also a very reduced stem, and tuber is also a underground stem that is storing the food material. So if we see the first one, that is the rhizome. As you have seen, these rhizome are the horizontal stem that grow below the ground. They have a horizontal growth. As you can see, these are the nodal region, these are the lateral buds, and from the growing shoot, at the end you will find a growing shoot, and from the below part there is a new root which is originating, and these are the old roots. So this is the example of this type of a stem is irises, ginger and grasses. They have a underground rhizome type of stem. Now moving towards the next type, that is the bulb. Bulb is a large buds with a small stem at the base. These are the bulblets, or it is called as the stem that is very reduced, which is surrounded by a numerous fleshy leaves. As in case of onion, these you can see here, these are the fleshy leaves and this is the very suppressed type of stem that is called as bulblets, and from their base there is origination of the roots. As you can see in case of tulip or onion, these are the adventitious roots. So example of the bulb is onion and tulip, lily. These are the examples of bulb type of underground stem. Now moving towards the next one, that is corm. Corm resembles also bulb but composed of an entire stem that surrounding the few papery scale leaves. As you can see here, these are the papery covering that has a nodes and internodes, and they have a vertical growth habit and in comparison to gingers. As you can see at the base they have a root. This is the older corn, this one is the new corn. These are the growth habits, and the examples of corn are the crocus and gladiolus. Now moving towards the last underground stem modifier, that is the tuber. Tuber, there is the accumulation of food at the tip of the underground stolon, that is termed as the tuber. As you can see, these are the tuber, and these eyes of potato have the nodes. These are the nodal region, these are termed as the nodes, and these are the starch landed stems. They have a store, there is a quite large amount of starch stored in this particular type of stem. As you can see here, these are the examples of this is a potato. So these are the underground modifications. Now moving towards the subaerial modifications. In the subaerial modification, the first one is the runner. Subaerial modification are those modifications which just lie above the soil. So as in case of grasses, you will find that the grasses have a run just above the ground. These are the runner stem, as you can see, and the example of this particular is the grasses like Sanodon, Dactylon. And the next subaerial modification is the stolon. In stolon, you will find there is a these runners have a straight line, while the stolon there is a some angled stem. You will find, as you can see, there is a stem which has some angled, as you can see, and there is a at the nodal region you will find the adventitious branches, and these are the leaves. And the example of stolon is the like strawberry plant, of the stem of the strawberry plant that have a stolon type of stem. Then for the sucker, the third type of aerial type of modification is the sucker. In the sucker, there is a under just you can see there is a trailing stem. This is termed as a sucker, which is, and there is a aerial shoot from on which the leaves are attached. And the example of sucker is the mint. Then the fourth type of the subaerial modification is the offset. It is just as a runner, but offset that present in the hydrophytic plants like in aquatic plant like Agonia or Pistia. As you can see, this one is the Pistia. In Pistia, you can see this is the offset stem. So this offset is run on the water surface, and from nodal regions of this particular offset, upper there is a leaves is present, and the lower surface there is a adventitious roots is originated. So offset is just like a runner, but is present in the aquatic plants also. These are the subaerial modifications. And the third type of modification is the aerial modifications of stem, and the most common examples like phylloclades and cladode. Phylloclades are the modifications of stem in which stem become flat. As you can see in this image, this green portion is the stem, and these spiny structure are the leaf which is converted into the spines. So in case of phylloclade, like the examples like Opuntia, and this whole stem is converted into a flat like structure that performing the work of photosynthesis, because this is the adaptation for the xerophytic plants and because of their scarcity of waters. As you know, the transpiration rate is maximum from the leaves due to the presence of stomata. When stem becomes photosynthetic, there will be a very red, there is a very less amount of water is transpired, and there will be less amount of water lost in the form of transpiration. So leaves become into the is modified into the spiny structure, and the stem modified into the flat structure that performing the work of photosynthesis, and they are also storing the water. As you can see, these are the fleshy in nature. So, these are the spines region, they are the nodal region, in between there is a many internodes. So, phylloclade is a modified form of a stem which is performing the work of photosynthesis and for checking the rate of transpiration. Then the next is also the cladode is also a modified form of a stem that performing the work of photosynthesis, but here the growth, there is a nodes and internodes are very limited and they have a limited growth. As you can say in case of asparagus, you can say these are the modified stem that look like a leaf and they are performing the work of photosynthesis, and these particular plants leaves become very small size. As you can see, these are the hook leaves. So, the examples of cladode is the asparagus. Besides this aerial modification, the phylloclade and cladodes, other aerial modification like thorns. Many plants the stem is modified into the thorn, as you can see here, like in case of bougainvillea or in the ziziphus, the modified into the thorn structure that protecting the plants from the animals. Then in many also plants the stem is modified into the tendrils that help in the climbing of the plant, like in case of cucurbits. Here you can see the stem is modified into the climbers, and the next in the bulbil, like stem is modified into the bulbil that is performing the, that is used for the reproduction of the plant for vegetative propagation. So, these are the modifications of stem. That is all for today. Next we will learn about the morphology of leaves. So, today we will learn about the morphology of stem, root. Next we will learn the leaf morphology. That is all for today's session. Thank you all.